Welcome back to Lesson 15 of the Napoleon Hill 17 Universal Principles of Success. On this program, we'll be discussing and uncovering in great depth Napoleon Hill's Lesson 15 entitled Maintenance of Sound Health. We have a power trio who really know and understand firsthand the great importance that comes with maintenance of sound health, as outlined by Napoleon Hill. So before we enter this exciting session together on behalf of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, it's our great pleasure and honor of introducing our distinguished guests for this program. And they are Kate Larsen, Kathleen Passanisi, and Art Holst. Starting with Kate Larsen, Kate is a 20-year-plus executive coach veteran. She's also been a group fitness instructor since 1985 and is a certified personal trainer. She's the author of Progress, Not Perfection, Your Journey Matters, a guide to living a purpose-filled, healthy, and connected life. Kate is an expert on health and wellness. She is a faculty member, advisor, and past mentor coach for Well Coaches Corporation, which offers wellness coach training to health and fitness professionals and coaching services in partnership with the American College of Sports Medicine. Kate reflects that during her early adult years, she found herself tremendously overwhelmed with life and responsibility. She came across the work of Napoleon Hill and loved its focus on having a positive, proactive attitude which influenced her actions. It offered her encouragement, hope, and nurtured her courage when she needed it, which continues to influence her personal and professional choices today. Joining Kate, Kathleen Passanisi, who is a licensed medical professional for 4 decades. She founded New Perspectives in 1987 to address issues of wellness, life balance, stress management, the science of happiness, and the therapeutic benefits of laughter and humor. She's an international recognized presenter, inducted into the National Speakers Association, a Speaker Hall of Fame recipient, and a Lifetime Achievement Award in the field of therapeutic humor. She is also the author of numerous books, including It's Your Life, Choose Well, Thoughts on Living a Happier, Healthier, Saner Life Now, Not Someday. She's the funniest woman in Lake St. Louis, Missouri, and possibly the Western Hemisphere. Kathleen first read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich long before she even knew what a professional speaker was. As a young wife, working mother, she liked his no-nonsense approach, and she reflects on Napoleon Hill's work. She keenly observes that Hill was really ahead of his time. She states that when you read his work today and the concept of wholeness comes through, even though we didn't use that terminology for quite a while in the West, she solidly echoes Hill's conviction that what we choose to do should be in concert with the laws of nature and should never conflict with the well-being of others. And thirdly, joining these lovely ladies, Kate and Kathleen, is the great and legendary Art Holst. Yes, Art is a legend in the speaking industry. Art has a broad background that provides a foundation for his messages, spiced with inspiration, humor, and poetry. Art was a top salesman in the building materials industry for 10 years. For 12 years, he worked as an administrator for the Forest Park Foundation, developing programs in park and recreation development, physical medicine and rehabilitation, housing for the elderly, and other creative projects aimed at community betterment. As an infantry captain in World War II, he learned how to educate, train, and motivate troops to react in challenging times. He was a member of the Economic Security Committee of the United States Chamber of Commerce, and Art is best known for his humor and as a Sunday zebra officiating for the National Football League for 15 years. He officiated 4 championship games and 2 Super Bowls. As a relatively young man in his 30s, Art was introduced to Napoleon Hill's writings. He wanted to make a career change, but with a wife, 4 children, and a mortgage and limited savings, he was unsure. He was somewhat of a goal setter anyway, but when he read Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, it brought together those concepts that led to a significantly more successful life. So with that introduction, welcome everybody to the lesson of maintenance of sound health.
Nice to be here.
Lovely to be in such wonderful company.
Oh,
amen.
Fabulous.
I would say another amen. I can't wait to hear what we have to say.
So before we go into the maintenance of sound health and its definition and how to harness that, what would be your understanding of the definition of sound health in and that of itself? And perhaps, Kathleen, we might be able to start with your perception on that.
I'll tell you, the easiest way for me to address that is to tell you, first of all, what health is not. I mean, not sick is not the same as healthy. Just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're healthy. And this is what we've sort of discovered. We, in Western medicine, we have always looked at this model of if your blood pressure is up, if your weight is up, if this is wrong, if that is wrong, then we want to make it so it's not so bad. But just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're vibrantly healthy or filled with energy or you have amazing endurance or your immune function is nice and strong. So what I'm looking for when we say health and what I like about Hill, he's talking about more than average. We all laugh. We say we all want to be normal, but none of us want to be average. And when it comes to health, it's more than just physical health. When I teach it in 6 dimensions. I teach physical health, mental health, the thinking, knowing part of the brain, emotional health, social health, the quality of your relationships and how they affect your well-being, vocational health, how does your job affect your health, and then spiritual health, which is your core, your essence, your integrity, and for those who have a certain form of religion. So it's more than just physical health of the body. It's much more, and it's even broader mind, body, spirit, but not just are you okay, but the body is such a miraculous thing. Mind, body, spirit is so miraculous. Are you really getting exceptional quality from this gift that you've been given to wander around the planet in?
Fascinating, and you've really brought in our understanding of what that is. Is Kate would like to add to that?
What I was listening to that I love about the sound health concept is that it goes beyond physical well-being. As Kathleen was saying, we'll take a look at all aspects of who you are and how you show up in the world. And if we also keep in mind that, just like I think everyone's aware of the fact that all of us have very unique fingerprints. So none of our fingerprints are going to be the same. I've studied in neuroscience for the last few years. I'm in a master's program on neuroscience, the uniqueness of the brain, and we know that the brain is as unique as our fingerprints. So if we take that into consideration, when we talk about sound health, we need to consider that for all of us, it's going to be nuanced and slightly different. So we can't assume that sound health is going to look the same for everyone. So the steps to being grounded in great health is going to look different for everyone. And with that, it means we approach it in various ways. For me, a grounding piece to sound health begins and almost ends with a sense of contentment and peace of mind with I'm doing the best I can with where I'm at, the season of life, and the choices I'm making. And whatever that results in, for me, is sound health. Even when things go awry. A number of years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So clearly that wasn't what we'd call lacking disease. However, in the midst of that, I could still choose to approach my health and well-being proactively, even if it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I think that's an important concept about sound health, is pursuing it intentionally and proactively while taking into consideration circumstances that may be outside of our control and taking charge of what we can control.
I think you touched on something that's very, very important from the standpoint of a guy that's soon to be 91 years old, and that is that good health, you've already mentioned, both of you have mentioned the physical side of it, but the attitudinal side is tremendous. And as we grow older, and I can speak to this from experience, as we grow older, we have to be able to adapt to change. We have to have the discipline to adapt to changes in our body, the changes in our surroundings, changes in our family situation. Get to my age, friends die, people have all kinds of things happen to them. You ache, you hurt. You have to be able to look beyond that. To look beyond, you know that to monitor yourself as you should with a physician, monitor all those basic things, and then from an attitudinal standpoint, to take the attitude that I am going to understand as well as I can what my limitations are based on the things that have happened to me. I cannot run a mile anymore, but I can walk 4 miles. I used to be able to run 2-3 miles. Now I can't do that. But to accept the changes that you have based on your age, the changes, for example, your breast cancer. And I think that we cannot overemphasize the ability to adapt to change, and that takes, of course, one of the things that Napoleon Hill wrote about in his 17 steps, discipline, the constant discipline it takes to achieve that health.
Excellent. The key word, adaptability. And from what each one of you have been discussing, it seems that balance is very central to sound health, isn't it?
You know, the concept of balance, for whatever reason, balance got to be the word that was used. At least in my world, maybe it's more about synchronicity, or balance implies everything is equal in one form or another. Yet it's more about, as we're sort of inferring, it's recognizing our needs and addressing them. And sometimes I might need more time for play and for fun and laughter that helps my well-being and my positive mental attitude. Other times there's a focus maybe on exercise, or it's focused on business, because my sense of giving back to the world and having a sense of purpose contributes to my sound health. So balance is a word people use, and I would consider it might be something that implies less about equal and more about synchronicity and coming together in a way that works fluidly, that allows us to also take into mind our family. Napoleon talks about the concept of our environment affecting us. He was so ahead of the game relative to other folks. And he referenced paying attention to our environment because it makes a difference in our health and well-being. Spot on with that one. And the other one is around the seasons of life. He calls it the waves and rhythms in our life, and that the rhythms, there's an order to it. And you're describing being in a different season of life than I would be in, and so we address it differently. And yet, I would suspect if you did sort of a sense of health and well-being, the positivity scale, all three of us, or really Phil, you as well, would rank and hit really high on it.
Fascinating insights.
I'd like to weigh in here if I can. When I work with people on the issue of balance, and when you teach the stuff, you do so much research on it, but a lot of people really, and I'm with Kate on this, really think of balance as time management. If I tried to teach time management, it would be fraud. I mean, I am the worst time manager. I have no business teaching anyone that. And so the way we look at balance, and it's been said that balance is really a state of mind, not a state of affairs. And it's how you feel. It's your own perception. And one of the things that you look at is if you can get in touch with what you value. And so I ask people, what do you value? And they'll always give me the top 7. Well, my faith, my family, my friends, my health, my work, my personal safety, my financial security, and some of my stuff. That's what most of them will say. And I say, oh, no, we value a lot more than that. But when we talk about it, I say, okay, you value your health. You tell me you value your health, so tell me what you're doing about it. Well, and so what I'm saying is when you can really get in touch with what you value, and one of the things that I value that wasn't obvious to me at the time, but whenever I didn't get it, it really tripped my trigger. It stressed me out. I value my leisure time. And I have to put that into my life, because when I don't get a certain amount of leisure time, my stress level goes up. And when I'm teaching value, you have to say to me then, when I say, what do you value, then I say, how do you apportion your resources, which is your time, your energy, your attention, your money? How do you show me that you value your health, your family, whatever it is, your sense of humor? Where is that? How do you show me that? And so balance is choices, and they're fluid, and they're like, same thing. I tell people, look, one week you're really good about going to the gym. The next week your mother falls in Cleveland, and you have to go and close up her house and get her into an assisted living facility. So that week you're going to be all about your mom, and the next week you're eating right, and the week after that you're down with the flu. So balance is a very fluid thing, and like we said at the beginning, we define things differently, but it really is a state of mind. It's really not a state of affairs.
I agree with all of that very much, and I think even beyond that, Yogi Berra said if you don't know where you're going, you may end up somewhere else. And so one of his wisdom things, and I think that the establishment of goals, which goes right along with all of the teaching of Napoleon Hill, for example, I've had 4 hip replacements and a shoulder replacement and a rod from my knee to my ankle and my right leg. I light up the airport a mile from the airport. And about 8 years ago, I was on a cane and could only walk a quarter of a mile without being breathless to sit down. And Elizabeth's a lovely woman I'm married to now, and she was walking 2 miles. And about 2 years into our relationship, I thought, well, gosh, I'm going to start doing the thing that I did when I used to get in shape for football. And that was to go out and run 50 steps and walk 50, run 50, walk 50 till I went a mile, and then change it to 60-40, running 70-30 until I was running a mile and then 2 miles. So I decided I was going to go a little farther each day on a cane. And with that definitive goal and doing something I liked, doing something that was fun to me, walking was fun. And I extended it, and within 6 months I was walking a mile, and within 9 months I was walking 2 miles with a cane. And 3 years ago, Elizabeth said to me one day, why don't you put your cane away? And I haven't used it since, and now I'm walking 3 or 4 miles a day. But having that definite thing that you want to accomplish, and I think we need to do that in several areas. One would be, what would you like to do to help others? What would you like to do to help others? Because that gives us help in our emotional health. What would you do to help you learn more? Take a course, do something at church, whatever, to learn. What do you like to do for fun? And then do it, and hopefully it's a helpful type of thing, and use that to underline the things that you do in health. And lastly, I think so many people, and I'm speaking now from the context of my age bracket, so many people look at the age of 65 and say, boy, I reached it, I'm going to sit down. And when they do, you rust out. If you're green, you grow. If you're ripe, you rot. And so I think all people need to look at life on the basis of what would I like to do work-wise, if possible, after I pass the age of 65 or 70. I did 2 programs last week, one in Michigan for 250 people about World War II, and another one at an 8th grade, and our presentation for 8th grade, we're studying the history of World War II, so I did that. And I think that those kind of things build strength emotionally as well as physically.
How very inspiring. Napoleon Hill points out that, as you've all been speaking about, that the mind and the body are connected. They can't be separated from one another in terms of this topic. Is it possible for someone to have a great, positive, healthy mind and get away with not taking care of their physical body, or vice versa? And how do you begin?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because my thought was not for very long.
Right. So we go back to synchronicity here again. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've got 3 young adult sons, and what they find interesting is they've been raised to eat well and exercise, and we're very blessed they're all doing that. However, they get annoyed with other people who eat poorly and don't exercise but might be lean. And one of the things that any of us could really articulate is that we've seen over a lifetime those choices do impact our long-term health, well-being, and attitude. And, yeah, some people can get away with it. However, the real danger in doing that is we've heard reference to you wouldn't take a Ferrari and put bad gas in it. You wouldn't skip its maintenance because that would be so disrespectful to the car.
Great analogy.
Yet we do that with our bodies. We've got masterful bodies that are nuanced and different, yet we know the basics of what is good and healthy for it. I would venture to say that for a lot of people today, and probably many listening to this, is that we've become so busy as a culture, as a planet, that we have become numb to our bodies and our needs unless we're very proactive about really thinking it through. And I will speak to my experience. I've talked with a lot of clients who really, when you ask the question, or you had referenced asking the question, what would I like to do? That many people will give a real flippant, well, I'd like to take time off, but they haven't really given thought to, well, what else? And when is the last time that you did some things for fun? Or we talk about valuing our health. When I ask people what do they value most in their lives, what's interesting is how often they will list their family and their friends and other things, and they don't mention their health. It's assumed or taken for granted. And so if I say, well, what might health fall up there? Oh, yeah. Okay, so if that were the case, what might you do differently if it was more at the forefront? Unfortunately, we oftentimes don't pay enough attention to our health until we're stressed or we're ill. And that goes back to Kathleen's comments earlier about time management, the kidding about, I shouldn't be the one doing that one. I would actually venture to say, really, we ought to pay more attention to expectation management. Most people that are running around crazy, busy, have a set of expectations that if they really took a look at them, they might understand why sound health can sometimes feel far away or too difficult to achieve. And so expectation management, recognizing that we've become numb to our bodies, and that it's not only a good idea, it's wonderful to take a look at what do I value, how do I want people to experience me, and what am I doing about that? One key question that oftentimes is insightful for executives I work with is, I'll say, so what has made you really successful in your career? And they will share either their persistence, their tenacity, maybe their ability to collaborate really well with other people. It could be their resourcefulness. And the simple question of, now what would happen if you were to take those same strengths that you just shared that you know you have and apply them to your health and well-being, what might change in your life? And it's sort of like a wow question for so many people.
One of the things that I see is the busyness of business. People are, especially when the economy has been going through a very difficult time, they are afraid to not be right in the middle of everything. And you were mentioning executives and stuff that you've worked with, Kate. I've worked with these executives who send emails to each other on Sunday night just to show I'm working. And I'm thinking, this is a plus. And the other thing is, well, we've got all this social networking now, all this social media. And one of the things, because people are afraid to be left out, and now anytime you're feeling like you always have to be on, that takes time away from your time to be off, to be reflective, to be looking at yourself, taking care of yourself. There's a thing I read the other day called FOMO, F-O-M-O, fear of missing out. And so you look on your Facebook or you look on whatever, oh, there's a party at somebody's house and I'm not there. Or they're having a meeting. They're having a big meeting and it's happening at this golf course and I wasn't included in the meeting. And now we're frantic about that. Whereas looking at your schedule and saying, where is my time on here? And they don't do that anymore. People are afraid to not be in the front row, seat at the table.
I think you're right on something, and I think one of the contributory things to that is the computer, Facebook, email, and all the rest. People spend, I have friends that I think they must be in front of that thing all day long from the stuff I get from them. And I deliberately limit my time in front of the computer. I'm not the best time manager on earth. I don't want to represent myself with that at all because my wife would tell you right away that I'm not. But I am a time manager to the extent that I do not let that computer and my email dictate my life. I sit down for so long a time, and I'm going to go through it. I have to go through it, and at the end of that time, I'm going to shut that thing off because you can get sung to sleep by that computer. Everything should be done in moderation. Ben Franklin said that many, many years ago. And moderation, I think, should apply in the use of the computer and electronic media.
That's a good point, Art. But when we were talking about the computer, I read a statistic one day that said something like 60% of people reach for an electronic device and check it before they get out of bed in the morning.
That's what I'm talking about.
And they're looking at it at night. So they've got an iPad or the phone or the BlackBerry or even a television, but the light from that screen, what happens is with the pineal gland, it tells the body it's daylight. It affects melatonin levels in the brain. And so rather than getting a restful sleep, we either have the TV on in the background with bad news or we're catching up on email. So we're filling ourselves with all of this information. And one of the biggest contributors to poor health, especially these days and especially in the United States, is we are a sleep-deprived nation. And one of the things that we could best do if we really wanted to make a good choice and impact ourselves in a very positive way is to make sure we're getting adequate sleep, which is more than 6 hours, preferably 7, could be 8. Some people need more, but not this 4 hours and I'm going to read in bed and do email. And people who are sleep-deprived, this is where it sets you up. When you're sleep-deprived, a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, you're burning fewer calories because you're not moving, your weight gain goes up, your immune system is affected. For students, their grades go down, and people like college students who don't sleep have higher anxiety levels, and if you don't sleep well, it's more than double the risk of having a heart attack or stroke. And if I could pick out one thing to say to people, if you could only do one thing for yourself in this day and age, what would it be? I would say, tell me about how much sleep are you getting and tell me the quality of your sleep.
I'd like to add a comment on that from a personal standpoint. It's rare that I don't get 8 hours sleep. I get 8 hours sleep almost every night. And if I wake up at night for a while and can't go back to sleep, I always do a lot of imagining, dreaming, thinking about things, how they could be, what I'd like to do, what I'd like to do in the next speech, what I'd like to do on the golf course. Positive thinking. I never, ever, ever, ever turn on a computer at night and never turn on the television. Never. And I think we really need to underline how important it is to get, for me, 8 hours sleep, and also to utilize that wake-up time for that wonderful, wonderful quality that human beings have, the quality to imagine. Imagine yourself healthy. Imagine yourself doing what you want to do. Think about what would be great in your life.
Well, and one of the other beautiful things that they tell you to do, too, and people say, well, count your blessings. When you're going to sleep at night, count your blessings. Yeah. And this is what we discover from positive psychology. It's not just counting your blessings, make a list, write them down. It's think about what it is you're grateful for, and then go into the emotion that accompanies that. So if you're thinking about your beautiful new grandchild, what is the emotion? Picture that face. What is the emotion that first time you held that child? Or let's say you had a doctor's appointment today, and the doctor said, I have great news. We just ran some tests on you, and the things we were most fearful about are not happening. You're going to be fine. How did you feel at that moment? Not just on your list, thank goodness I'm healthy, but what does it feel like to really, that thankfulness, that gift? How does that feel? How does it feel to have a brain that works, or that you could put your cane down and not use it, or that Kate got through breast cancer? Not just I beat cancer, but when you tie into the emotion, then you get all of the hormones that are positive in the body, and that's the antidote to that rush of negative hormones, all of that adrenaline, all that cortisol. So many of us have way too much of the stress hormones through the body. And when we're going to bed at night or waking up in the morning, gratitude with emotion, blessing the day, that gratitude is a much better thing to take to bed than a BlackBerry.
I
like that.
concept of that. The piece about, we've all referenced now the impact of computers and phones and iPads and all that affecting both the physical body, the pineal gland, and the light image. But the other part of it is our brains also become busier because they become preoccupied with what we were reading or what we were watching. And that leaves the prefrontal cortex unsettled because it's trying to process things. And one of the challenges is we've gotten in the habit, it's just a bad habit, that we take these, I say we, I don't, understanding this, I don't do this. However, many pick up their phone without even realizing they're doing it. We've developed culturally a bad habit of feeling like we've got to be connected. And one of the things that positive mental attitude that Hill talks about is that sense of reappraising. He didn't use the word reappraisal, but cognitive reappraisal is what positive mental attitude is about. It's taking what's in front of us and reframing it. And for me, one of the things I needed to learn to do at a really young age is stop obsessing and being driven by fear. Because fear, it drives a lot of our behaviors. That earlier mentioned fear of being left out. If we're driven by fear, then we're not being drawn by things that are compelling to us. And the positivity conversation in positive psychology, one of the things that one of the researchers, I'm sure you're familiar with, Barbara Fredrickson's work on positivity. Sure. The broaden and build theory says that when we look at things positively, that we have choice in our lives about when to sleep. And it might be hard. However, we do have choice in what we eat and who we connect with and how we react to people. When we go to that positive and even referencing grateful place, it expands our capacity to be creative and to think of other solutions and to see the good in things around us. However, when we get caught up in the negativity and the fear and the not enough feeling, I'm not enough, I don't have enough, that brings us down physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And when I say spirituality, one of the things that I would reference that connects to something we said a while ago about fear and spiritual well-being is that for many of us, when we are clear about our beliefs about why we're here and what our purpose is, if we believe in that and we have something that we believe in that goes beyond ourselves, I'll give you an example. My husband's a private pilot, and so when I fly with Jack, I'm in the co-pilot seat. And there have been times where we've pulled out the emergency book, and I'm like, I'm glad I'm not in charge. I'll take the barf bags and the emergency book, and I'll just do my best right here. And I know that I'm really not in charge. Well, the same is true, I think, when the fear wants to trigger us, the fear wants to take over. That if I have a faith foundation, called the Spirituality Foundation for many, that I've spent time nurturing, fear does not have the same power over me. And so when we talk about sound health, pursuing what it is we believe and why we believe it and how it affects our choices can help us address things like fear and uncertainty, which threatens us in a far more powerful and important way. When my oldest son was in 8th grade, we were driving to school, and he had a religion class where they were talking about what people believe and how they believe and that kind of thing. And he shook his head and he said, Mom, I think people just grow up and become whatever their parents were, because these kids don't have any clue as to why they believe what they believe. And the comment was, I want you to know why you believe what you believe so that you make choices that are those that are congruent for you for the rest of your life. And I don't know that many of us have taken the time to either re-examine that or dive into it, giving ourselves permission.
I think you hit it right there when you said we haven't taken the time because we don't have time to reflect. I hear people say to me all the time, I don't have a minute to think. And I say, not thinking is not good. That ain't good, honey. And if you're not thinking because you're just going along, and we say go with the flow. Well, the flow's going downhill. Things don't flow uphill. Do you really want to be going with the flow? And when you were talking, Kate, Dr. Herbert Benson, who is an MD from Harvard, he was one of the founders of the Mind Body Clinic, but he talks about the faith factor. And what he was talking about, he said, when people have faith in something outside themselves, whether it is God or you have faith in the universe or that there's order in the universe and I have a place for it, if you have faith that good will triumph over evil, if you have faith in something outside yourself, that something is looking out for you, the body will do what it was miraculously built to do, which is start to fix itself. But when the body is under stress, that does not happen. And so it behooves us. You've got a body that amazingly, you cut yourself and the body heals. It fixes it. You take a gallbladder out, you can do fine without it. But the problem is, in order for the body to work correctly, you have to reduce the stress, and you have to balance it so that you have good hormones, good food, and then the body will fix itself. And so with faith, when people say, same thing, well, I have faith, I say, oh, really? How do you practice that faith? Show me that. Where is that on your to-do list? You got a big to-do list that has 15 things. Where is that on? Well, I love my family. Show me where that is in your day. Where is that?
Basically, it kind of reminds me of the Covey stuff. You go back to your calendar and your checkbook, and you'll know what you really value. To ask that question, how would I know if I was observing you that that's the truth?
Well, and I think talk about Herb Benson and faith. I think when we look at sound health, the overall picture, and most people can tell you the components. I have to eat right, I have to exercise. They can tell you a lot of the physical stuff. Some of them will say, well, mentally, I know I need to keep my brain learning. I need to be at the top of my game, or I need to, if I want a loving relationship, I have to spend time with my beloved, or they can kind of give you the stuff that's almost like the chapter titles. They can give you the chapter titles, but they can't give you the text.
Yeah, we've talked about two things here, and you two have articulated it so very well. Faith and purpose. The faith that we have, grounded in whatever the faith is, faith in God, whatever it happens to be. And purpose. Purpose. Hartzell Wilson once wrote a poem that said, "Blessed is the man indeed who in this life can find a purpose that can fill his days and goals to fill his mind." And that is so true. When we have a purpose and a faith and fill our mind with faith and purpose, we now have a place to go, and that relates to our health as well as to our financial success and our family success and our emotional success.
People have to stop and have time to think. And, when I look at balance, and I tell people, balance is a balance between your external life and your internal life, between doing and being, and it's a balance between your have-tos and your want-tos. And so sometimes I'm sitting around, and I said, you're sitting there, and somebody says, what are you doing? I say, I'm being. I'm not doing anything. I'm just being. We have this need to be doing all the time. There has to be some downtime. There has to be some reflection. There has to be some appreciation. You have to be able to sit back and do that, and we're too busy with our have-tos. By the time we get to our want-tos, or I should, it's 11:30 at night, and you fall into bed with your stomach acid churning, and all you do is worry about the next day.
Or you've sipped on enough cocktails or wine in the evening to sort of bring yourself down and relax, and now your sleep is disrupted. In alignment with this, one of the things that would probably make sense to a great number of people is if you think about the downtime, that maybe if we think about athletes that are in training, an athlete schedule. So you did for the Super Bowls, I mean, awesome experience. But you think about the football players that are training, they don't train at the same intensity all year long. The season has ebbs and flows with intensity, and that's so they perform really well. The same thing is true for all of us. We have seasons of when we're going to be intense, and what happens is, it sounds like for many people, they forget to unplug or give themselves permission to have what we call the off-season.
I could talk to this in football as an official. I had to train starting out in March and be in shape to work when the preseason rolled out in August. But even with all of that and all the rule study and all the rest, when we went out for a big ball game, a Super Bowl, you get there and you have meetings at night and so on, but you still got time to sit with yourself, time to have dinner with the guys, time to go out and enjoy the scenery of the town. It was not all work. We were there, work, true, but the relaxation helps with the work, and the work helps with the relaxation. That's the balance that you seek.
So life is somewhat of, it's almost like running a marathon, isn't it? You need to really pace yourself, it seems, and not try to sprint through life because there are consequences to that. We've talked on so many aspects. We've talked about the mental well-being. We've talked about the importance of sleep, eating habits, and so forth. Where does someone start? How did they begin to map out a healthy strategy in order to gain greater energy, longevity, and accomplish more as a result of better health? What would you suggest, how they start mapping that out?
Well, the reason I say I can speak to that is my work for the last 10 years working with health professionals speaks to the fact that most of the patients that healthcare workers work with, you could say to someone that's diabetic or who's had a heart attack, you can ask them, so what do you think I'm going to tell you today? Or what do you expect me to be saying? And most people can list for you the things that they should be doing and haven't been or have been doing minimally. So we know that if facts and information were what people needed to be healthy, that certainly in the U.S. we'd be the healthiest nation on the planet. We've got more information than anyone knows what to do with. So instead of trying to give facts, that to explore what people really want, and you referenced it earlier, you love to walk, finding out what people really love, what they feel good about, and starting with those things. So for me, the work begins with writing, let's call it, if it's just primarily focused on health and wellness, your wellness vision. Now, I like to include a life vision because your health is a part of that. But what is it that you're drawn to? What can we craft as a statement that you can own, like a corporate vision statement? What is it we're here to do? What is it we're looking to accomplish? The goals and objectives will help move us toward it, but let's start with, what are we looking to accomplish? So a year from now, what would you love to say is true about your health and well-being? If I got to come meet you, what would you love for me to see in you and feel about you that would be very congruent with how you want to be? And when people start to talk about it in that way, there's something that's kind of like a wishful, a dreaming, and some areas are doing great in. Great, we'll do more of these areas you're doing and choosing well in, and how might being healthier in these areas make a difference? An interesting question for people is, so what does health and wellness look like for you? What would sound health look like for you? And to be honest, if most of us were quiet after we asked those kinds of questions and gave people the chance to really think about it, they'd get to some deeper, more important responses. I usually don't take the first response as the answer. There's usually more digging to be done.
You know, that time issue is always important, like you said, waiting for an answer. One of the things that I've tried to do a lot recently with people, especially when I'm doing a meeting with a group. I say to the person that invited me, I say, you know what happens? You do these big meetings, and especially if you're doing big health fairs, people come, they get a nice little canvas sack or a tote bag. They go around to all the exhibits and all the booths, and they get all the Post-it notes and all the shakers and all the antiseptic hand cream they can carry. And they get all this information on their health, and the stuff never comes out of the bag. It stays there. And so I say the problem is once they leave, they are tuned right back into the regular rhythm of their lives, and this stuff is not in there. I said they need to think about that while we're still here, while we're together. We need to have reflective time. We need to have give and take. We need to have some kind of support system. And one of the things that I love about all the positivity, that the science that's coming out on this, and one reason that people don't stick with things, you need a meaningful goal, but you need pleasurable journey. And so what happens is the pleasurable journey is where we get screwed up. You say to people, what's your goal? Well, I made a New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I say, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to go to spinning and eat rice cakes. I say, do you like spinning? No. Do you like rice cakes? They say, no. I say, if you crumble up rice cakes, you could use them for packing peanuts. I mean, why would you're not going to eat something you don't like. You hate spinning. What if you just went for a walk with the dog all by yourself every day through the woods? Or what if you could get together with your friend or take a swimming walk? What do you want to do that while you're doing it, you are really losing yourself in the pleasure of the activity? So in that time, you are stress-proofed. You're doing something positive, it feels good, and if it feels good, you're motivated to do it again.
I think one of the real important things, and again, coming from the context of being older, is to recognize your limits. Some people are going to go out and play. They haven't played golf forever. They're going to go out and play 18 holes of golf. I tell them, go play 2 holes. I've got a neighbor right now that I've just said that to. He's like,
oh, Art, I play 2 holes, and it takes the same amount of time as 18.
You hit the ball like I do. Now,
well, I hit 72 on 2 holes.
Yeah. Well, you're shooting par. You had a 72.
On 2 holes.
I tell them, recognize your limits, and then stretch those limits. Stretch those limits, and you'll find that you can stretch them if you stretch them gradually. You grab a piece of something and jerk it, you break it. But if you pull it, it'll stretch. So you do it gradually. Then the other thing we mentioned it several times is a goal, a purpose. What do you want to get done? What do you like to do it? What are the sensible limits in doing it? And then get busy at it. And the glue that holds it all together, look at it like a chair. The glue that holds it all together is discipline. Mm-hmm. Discipline is the glue that holds it all together. And as Napoleon Hill says, controlled enthusiasm is the engine that drives it.
Part of that was self-awareness. So the glue is discipline, but it's also self-awareness.
That self-awareness comes from having time to reflect.
Exactly.
Or taking time. Yes.
Well, you've got to have the time. I think the other thing is, too, is simplicity. We make things too complicated. Everybody does fast food. One of the worst things we do for our health is all this prepared food. And it's because, well, it takes too much time. No, it doesn't. How much time does it take to put together a salad and a little bit of protein and some fresh fruit? Not very hard. But if we could keep your exercise simple, and, I want to say one thing about exercise because I want to get it on this recording, is that some of the most interesting research that's come out lately, we tell people, especially people who are prone to depression or the blues, that, well, if you exercise, it's a natural mood elevator, which for most people it is. But what they're finding out now is not exercising is the equivalent to taking a depressant. If you choose not to move, you are choosing for yourself to feel more depressed. You're choosing depression. Everything is a choice, and so it's a question of before you do something, take a minute, because we do everything by rote, by habit. We do the same thing every day.
Right.
And so just think before you put something in your mouth. Think before you park right next to the building. Think before you decide to take that device to bed with you. Think for a minute, is this moving me closer to where I want to be or farther away? But if we could simplify it, you don't have to have, I tell people, you don't have to have $150 Reebok shoes for every possible athletic event. There's a reason for kids.
Another
Keep it simple.
Another thing I think is important is a sense of humor. Be able to look at life through the eyes of humor. As an older guy, we sat at our golf group this morning and joked about all our infirmities. Two deaf guys.
Well, you're in my territory there, Art, because I teach therapeutic humor, and I actually taught this a year or so ago. They actually had a conference at the National Institutes of Health on humor and healing. I mean, it's actually at the NIH now because they realize it's the field of psychoneuroimmunology, mind-body medicine, that what goes on in your head affects every cell and system of the body, and so what goes on in your head really needs to come off autopilot. We need to be very much more conscious of what we're doing.
The only thing I gave to my country, I was never wounded in the war, but I gave my hearing. All the loud explosions left me hearing, so I have 5 hearing aids. And we joke about hearing it. 2 deaf guys met on the street. One of them said to the other one, "Are you Wembley?" He said, "No, it's Thursday." The other one said, "So am I. Let's have a drink."
But see, I've taken care of an awful lot of patients in my time, and you can almost tell sometimes by simply the attitude of somebody who's going to fare better than somebody else. And sometimes the people that fare the best are physically. If you just did a physical assessment of somebody, you'd go, whoa, this guy's going to have a harder time than this guy. But it's that mental component. And like you said early on, attitude. And that's a big piece of it. But all of this we're finding now, because Western medicine, I told Phil a long time ago when we first started talking, I said, when I first started off in healthcare, we followed what was called dualism, separation of the mind and body. I said, we drew a line, and we said the psychiatrist takes you from the neck up, the internist from the neck down, and the priest, rabbi, and minister will take the soul, but the 3 are not connected. And man, did we have to turn that around fairly quickly, because they are so together, you cannot begin to separate the influence that each has on the other. But here's the good thing. If I make good choices physically, it also improves me mentally and spiritually. If I make a good mental choice, it affects everything. It's like a positive cascading effect. And here's the cool thing about this, and this to me is just amazing. We are all made of energy. A rock is made of energy. It's just dense energy. Everything is energy, and energy is connected. And so we are all influencing the energy of others. So if I'm with you and I'm in a positive state of mind, I can influence you. And now we know that smiles are contagious. And if I smile at Art, then Art smiles at the next person, that person, and so on. But that smiling changes the chemistry of the body. It's fabulous. I mean, the research behind this, people can Google it. I mean, we could sit here and talk about the research and who did it and where to find it. You can Google. What do we do before Google? You can Google this stuff, and you'll find out. We're not making this. Somebody said to me once after, because I was given a class on therapeutic humor, and this woman comes up to me and says, "Is this humor thing a fad?" Yeah, smiling is too. Smiling is a fad. It's like the pet rock and the chia thing, you know? It's not going out. A merry heart is good like a medicine.
That's right.
Yes, it is. And this positivity and upbeat, we've been given this wonderful thing called a body to wander around the planet in. And like Kate said, if you got a Ferrari, you don't take it over to the Walmart and put the cheap gas in. And so it doesn't take all day, every day to take care of it. It just takes a little bit conscious thinking, always making a little bit better choice, a little bit better choice. But you really got to take time to think about it.
If anyone wants to do research on what you were just saying, Kathleen, if they Google mirror neurons, because that's what we're discovering in the brain, is the way that we, and Ann Cuddy has done TED Talks on body stance and position and how it affects ourselves as well as other people. So those are just great resources to learn more about it. And in connection to, Phil, your original question about what can we do to get started, the other thing that I don't think we've talked about specifically yet is very important for behavior change is in medicine and even psychology, we talk about what's called the trans-theoretical model of change. It's a staged approach to readiness for change. And one of the things that when people say, I want to lose, in Kathleen's example, 30 pounds, we understand what that means, and we can often dive to, now how are you going to do it, which is the action stage, instead of to say, all right, so it sounds like you've been thinking about this. Basically, beforehand it was pre-contemplation, now you're contemplating it, and what's it going to take, and who's going to be impacted. And then there's the step of preparing to make the change and take action, and then there's action. And we tend to want to get to the action without considering the repercussions and the other things in our environment or the ripple effect of those choices, which is why we fall back into our habits so quickly. We want to do better. I mean, diets and exercise clubs and everything else, the money invested reflects our desire to be of sound body and mind, and yet the challenge of it continues, and oftentimes it's because people don't have the path, if you will, to reflect, to consider what's involved, and then get the support systems to act on it.
Building on what Kate said, when we talk about motivation, because people always say, are you a motivational speaker? You know, I say, I can't motivate you to do anything you don't want to do.
That's right.
But I can give you some information that may help you get there. Motivation comes from movere, which means to move or to compel to action. Every motive falls into two categories, pain or pleasure. And which one do you think would be more fun? Pleasure. Which one do most people opt for? Pain. If you get sick enough, mad enough, frustrated enough, you'll change. But do you really want that as your motivation? Wouldn't you rather be moving towards something positive than running away something negative? And as Kate was talking about earlier, fear, because escaping pain is fear-based. I mean, pain's a good motivator, but if you got a choice, would you really want that? So when we talk about making all these changes and doing this, and like she said, you have to be a certain preparedness. What stage are you in of readiness as you're beginning to do it? But if you're getting pictures in your mind, and visualization is a very, very wonderful thing to do, where do you want to go with this? Couple it with emotion. How is that going to feel? You know, how does it feel? And couple the picture plus the feeling and moving toward rather than running away. And then, like Art said, that amount of discipline. And discipline is saying, I'm going to do it today because, and it's easier to discipline yourself to do something you don't want to do if you can picture where it's going to get you. And you already can put yourself in how it feels.
We are in charge of our own behavioral change. We have the power to do that. Nobody else can. You can tell us about it, but we have to have the discipline to do it. And I think one of the things I'd like to say as we get near the end of this is, I think Rudyard Kipling said it best. He said, what you do when you don't have to determines what you will be when you can no longer help it. And that means that you people who happen to hear this that are a lot younger than I need to start early, because what you do when you don't have to determine what you're going to be when you can no longer help it.
Words of wisdom.
And Art, I would make one nuance, Bill, and that is you don't have to do anything, you get to.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right. Wonderful. Well, this has been just a wonderful time with treasures and jewels of insight that we can take and begin applying. So in closing, perhaps we can just go round circle and start with you, Kate, and then Kathleen, and perhaps end up with you, Art. But if there was one takeaway, one gem that you feel you can impart to our listeners to apply today, what would that be? And along with that, could you tell our listeners where they can find more about you, your website, and so forth? And Kate, let's start with you.
Well, it probably would be that you really do have choice, and that there are ways to get support and encouragement so that you don't have to do lifestyle change alone. And maybe that ties very well to the concept of you have choice and that there is support. And that, for me, it's my website is my name, www.katelarsen, and Larsen's LARSEN.com. And that the fact that we have choice is incredibly empowering. And that really nurtures someone's sense of autonomy, which is just critical to our well-being. So autonomy and well-being are deeply connected. So I would leave it at that.
Excellent. Excellent insight. Well, thank you, Kate. Kathleen?
I think it's a matter of taking personal responsibility instead of handing over control of our well-being to other people we call the experts, and that you can do your homework, get the information, but you have to sit down, because we talked about, especially at the beginning, individuality. What's right for me at this point in my life, what's right for me with the resources I have or the challenges I'm facing. You have to be at peace with that, and you have to then have a meaningful goal, couple it with a pleasurable journey. And my company motto has always been optimism guides, humor sustains. I'm going to hold the best picture in my head of what I want, and while I'm here, while it's not quite happening, it's a sense of humor and laughter and joy and those things that will get me through the worst of times. It will get me there if I just keep my eye on the good thing. And I think people need to surround themselves with people who are equally enthusiastic. If you want to be upbeat, don't hang around with a bunch of whiners. And if you want to look for my information, and I'd love for you to do it, it's my name. It's Kathleen Passanisi, KathleenPassanisi.com. That would be lovely. And I also want to say how pleased I am to have been a part of this. It was just a real pleasure and a privilege.
Oh, well, thank you, Kathleen. Oh, we're all smiles. Well, Art, you take us home and
I would like to say that I think the primary thing to do is set out a goal, just like you do in football. Know where the goal line is and head for it. And remember that we don't run for a touchdown on every play. That's why we have downs and first downs. You go a little bit at a time. Somebody has said that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And life is a cinch by the inch, but hard by the yard. So pick out a recognizable, obtainable goal. Go for it with good sense, both in diet, exercise, sleep, love, humor, family, caring for others. All of those things tied together. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. You can find out more about me at www.artholst, Holst, like a Holstein cow with a EIN left off, www.artholst.com or www.speakersoffice.com. And it's been a delight to work with two lovely, lovely ladies and a lot of fun. And thanks to you, Phil, for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Art, and thank you, Kate, Kathleen. It's been a real joy. You have just blessed us with tremendous insights, and we've just scratched the tip of the iceberg, but we certainly can learn more and go into greater depth of knowledge by visiting your websites. So, listeners, that has been the Lesson in Maintenance of Sound Health. Please tune in for Lesson 16 on Budgeting Time and Money with Larry Wingett, Sharon Lecter, and Jim Stovall. It's been a real blessing. God bless you all.